I'm Pranami and you're watching Pages of Glow. So if you're new to my channel, essentially I just read short stories, sometimes poems. I'll tell you a little bit about the author, the historical situation, and then I'll delve into the themes that are present, the motifs, the symbols, a character analysis. What is the message of the story and what does it have to do with us today? Things like that. The short story that I will be reading to you today is called The Grasshopper and the Bell Cricket. Now this is a very, very fun short story. It is so nostalgic and it is essentially about this unnamed narrator who is seeing this group of children running around looking for insects in a forest with their beautiful handmade colored lanterns. And about this little interaction that happens between this boy and a girl who we can assume like each other, or the boy likes the girl. And it's a very, very small detail. And, the boy and the girl don't notice it, but the narrator does. And he talks about how, they'll never ever see this again. They'll never think about this moment again. And he really just talks about, how we find human connection, how we find love. What is the human experience? What is the shared human experience? Things like that. I think it's a very interesting short story. And the feeling that it brings in you when you're reading it can be so nostalgic, even if you are the children's age themselves or you are nowhere near as old as the narrator. It still makes you look back on your own experiences and look towards your future and hope for the type of love that this narrator seems to be speaking about. That is, without further ado, let's get on with the video. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and also comment down below which short story you would like me to read. Whatever you guys comment down, I promise I will read it. I do not care if it's a book, if it's a short story, if it's a poem, and I'll do my best to give an in-depth analysis. Without further ado, let's get on with the video. The Grasshopper and the Bell Cricket by Yasunari Kawabata. Walking along the tile-roofed wall of the university, I turned aside and approached the upper school. Behind the white board fence of the school playground, from a dusty clump of bushes under the black cherry trees, an insect's voice could be heard. Walking more slowly and listening to that voice, and furthermore reluctant to part with it, I turned right so as not to leave the playground behind. When I turned to the left, the fence gave way to an embankment planted with orange trees. At the corner, I exclaimed with surprise, my eyes gleaming at what they saw up ahead. I hurried forward with short steps. At the base of the embankment was a bobbing cluster of beautiful, barry-colored lanterns, such as one might see at a festival in a remote country village. Without going any further, I knew it was a group of children on an insect chase among the bushes of the embankment. There were about 20 lanterns. Not only were they crimson, pink, indigo, green, purple, and yellow lanterns, but one lantern glowed with 5 colors at once. There were even some little red store-bought lanterns, but most of the lanterns were beautiful square ones the children had made themselves with love and care. The bobbing lanterns, the coming together of the children on this lovely slope, surely it was a scene from a fairy tale. One of the neighborhood children had heard an insect sing on this slope one night. Buying a red lantern, he had come back the next night to find the insect. The night after, there was another child. This new child could not buy a lantern. Cutting out the back and front of a small carton and papering it, he placed a candle on the bottom, fastened a string to the top. The number of children grew to 5 and then to 7. They learned how to color the paper that they stretched over the windows of the cutout cartoons and to draw pictures on it. Then these wise child artists cutting out round, 3-cornered, and lozenge leaf shapes in the cartons, coloring each little window a different color with circles and diamonds, red and green, made a single and whole decorative pattern. A child with a red lantern discarded it as a tasteless object that could be bought at a store. The child who made his own lantern threw it away because the design was too simple. The pattern of light that one had in hand the night before was unsatisfying the morning after. Each day, with cardboard, paper, brush, scissors, penknife, and flue, the children made new lanterns out of their hearts and minds. Look at my lantern. Be the most unusually beautiful. And each night they had gone out on their insect hunts. These were the 20 children and their beautiful lanterns that I now saw before me. Wide-eyed, I loitered near them. Not only did the square lanterns have old-fashioned patterns and flower shapes, but the names of the children who had made them were cut out into square letters of the syllabary. Different from the painted-over red lanterns, others, made of thick, cut-out cardboard, had their designs drawn upon the paper window so that the candle's light seemed to emanate from the form and the color of the design itself. The lanterns brought out the shadows of the bushes like a dark light. The children crouched eagerly on the slope wherever they heard an insect's voice. "Does anyone want a grasshopper?" A boy who had been peering into a bush about 30 feet away from the other children suddenly straightened up and shouted. "Yes, give it to me." 6 or 7 children came running up. Crowding behind the boy who had found the grasshopper, they peered into the bush. Brushing away their outstretched hands and spreading out his arms, the boy stood as if guarding the bush where the insect was. Waving the lantern in his right hand, he called again to the other children. "Does anyone want a grasshopper? A grasshopper?" I do. 4 or 5 more children came running up. It seemed you could not catch a more precious insect than a grasshopper. The boy called out a third time. 2 or 3 more children came over. "Yes, I want it." It was a girl, who had just now come behind the boy who discovered the insect. Lightly turning his body, the boy gracefully bent forward. Shifting the lantern to his left hand, he reached his right hand into the bush. "It's a grasshopper." "Yes, I'd like to have it." The boy quickly stood up. As if to say, "Here," he thrust his fist that held the insect at the girl. She, slipping her left wrist under the string of the lantern, enclosed the boy's fist with both hands. The boy quietly opened his fist. The insect was transferred to between the girl's thumb and index finger. "Oh, it's not a grasshopper, it's a bell cricket." The girl's eyes shone as she looked at the small brown insect. "It's a bell cricket! It's a bell cricket!" The children echoed in envious chorus. "It's a bell cricket! It's a bell cricket!" Glancing with her bright, intelligent eyes at the boy who had given her the cricket, the girl opened the little insect cage hanging at her side and released the cricket in it. "It's a bell cricket." "Oh, it's a bell cricket," the boy who'd captured it muttered. Holding up the insect cage close to his eyes, he looked inside. By the light of his beautiful, many-colored lantern, also held up at eye level, he glanced at the girl's face. "Oh," I thought. I felt slightly jealous of the boy and sheepish. How silly of me to not have understood his actions until now. Then I caught my breath in surprise. Look, it was something on the girl's breast, which neither the boy who had given her the cricket nor she had accepted it, nor the children who were looking at them noticed. In the faint greenish light that fell on the girl's breast, wasn't the name Fujio clearly discernible? The boy's lantern, which he held up alongside the girl's insect cage, inscribed in his name, cut out in the green papered aperture onto her white cotton kimono. The girl's lantern, which dangled loosely from her wrist, did not project its pattern so clearly, but one could still make out, in a trembling patch of red on the boy's waist, the name Kyoko. This chance interplay of red and green, if it was chance interplay, neither Fujio nor Kyoko knew about. Even if they remembered forever that Fujio had given her the cricket and that Kyoko had accepted it, not even in dreams would Fujio ever know that his name had been written in green on Kyoko's breast, or that Kyoko's name had been inscribed in red on his waist, nor would Kyoko ever know that Fujio's name had been inscribed in green on her breast, or that her own name had been written in red on Fujio's waist. Fujio, even when you become a young man, laugh with pleasure at a girl's delight when told that it's a grasshopper she is given a bell cricket, laugh with affection at a girl's chagrin when told that it's a bell cricket she is given a grasshopper. Even if you have the wit to look by yourself in a bush away from the other children, there are not many bell crickets in the world. Probably you will find a girl like a grasshopper, whom you think is a bell cricket. And finally, to your clouded, wounded heart, even a true bell cricket will seem like a grasshopper. Should that day come when it seems to you that the world is only full of grasshoppers, I will think it pity that you have no way to remember tonight's play of light, when your name was written in green by your beautiful lantern on a girl's breast. The end. So that was The Grasshopper and the Bell Cricket by Yasunari Kawabata. Before I start the analysis, I'm just going to give you a quick overview. So essentially there's this unnamed narrator who's observing this group of children at night who were playing with these like gorgeous homemade lanterns, and they are searching for insects. One boy, Fujio, finds this grasshopper, and he offers it to a girl, Kyoko, who he kind of likes. It's pretty obvious he likes her, and she accepts it, only to reveal that it's actually a very rare bell cricket. Then the author kind of reflects on the innocence of that moment and the like metaphorical significance behind it. So first I want to talk a little bit about the themes present. So first of all, obviously there's just the theme of innocence. At its core, the story is just capturing this fleeting childhood moment of this boy who's giving a girl a bug, and then the girl is cherishing it. The beauty of it really just lies in like the innocence, and the narrator sees this as like this universal moment that all children go through, right? These small acts of affection that actually carry more emotional weight than they realize. There's this quote from the story that says, I thought if it were a grasshopper, Fujio would give it to any girl. But since it's a bell cricket, he might want to give it to Kyoko alone. I feel like this really shows how children, really without knowing it, start to realize, like almost distinguish between love just given freely and like given specially, like especially. So the grasshopper is kind of the symbol of like almost ordinary affection, but the bell cricket represents more rare and like almost precious love. Another theme I want to talk about is like the foreshadowing of like the loss of innocence. So the narrator kind of ends the story with like, it starts off like very nostalgic and like sweet, and it still ends up on the same note, but the story almost ends with like a quiet, like melancholic reflection. He says, but also you will find a true bell cricket. Even as you are finding a true bell cricket, you may be sadly looking at a true grasshopper. He says something like this. And the line is very bittersweet because it suggests that as children grow, they become more aware of like the complexities and disappointments of relationships. The mistake of recognizing someone as ordinary or incredibly special, but then later realizing what they truly are, it's just, I would say it's like almost like a gentle warning, perhaps, about, the inevitable pains of just growing up and how our perspective will shift slowly with time. And I feel like this is such a, and I say this so often, truly I say this so often on my channel, but I feel like it's such a deceptively simple story because, at the face of it, you just see this cute little story about this young boy. But truly, I think there's so much symbolism in it as well. I want to talk a little bit about that. The grasshopper is just this, like, I would say it symbolizes just, like, the most common, like, unremarkable love or affection. Then the bell cricket is more, like, rare. It's more of a precious love or a precious moment. Then you have, like, the lanterns. I feel like, honestly, those just have a lot to do with, like, individuality. They are all about, like, being creative and, like, the children's personal expression. And so I feel like it has to do with individuality. And then specifically the light that is, like, that's, like, projected up on the kids. I feel like that is more of, like, just the projection of, like, our identity that we put onto our partner in relationships. I have to say, the moment that the narrator, like, sees the names Fujio and Kyoko reflected on, like, the bodies of the kids, that is such a special moment because I literally, like, I thought that was so cute because, it kind of just symbolizes how in such intimate moments, people project parts of them onto others, and, we will always carry the imprints of others' affections. I remember there was this whole trend going on social media where I forgot the setup of it exactly, but it was about how we are all, so much of our identity is based off of people that we love or have loved in the past. And then people in the trend would talk about like, oh, my favorite song was introduced to me by my ex. My favorite, the food that I eat every single day, like the food I have every day for breakfast, was introduced to me by my best friend who I no longer speak with. I do this weird little habit thing every day because I saw my dad do it. And, things like that, it just kind of shows how we're all built, or almost like we build ourselves based off of the people that we love the most. And I feel like this is just such a good way to show this in a metaphorical sense. I have to say the narrator was also such an interesting character to me because the tone in which the narrator is speaking this entire time, it's not necessarily like melancholic or, depressed. It's more just like retrospective and like philosophical. And I was talking with a friend about, what the narrator could possibly mean. And she had this interesting theory and she was like, oh, what if it's like the young man in the future? But I mean, I can't say anything about that, but I just feel like it definitely feels like this older man who's remembering or like observing kids in the schoolyard. And he's not mocking them. I would not say he's being overly sentimental. He's just more like trying to preserve the essence of a memory that he knows the children will forget because, it's such a small moment and they don't even realize that it's happening. But he will see it and he will know that it existed at one point, and that is important to him. I do want to give a little bit of context in the story. So Yasunari Kawabata, he was the first Japanese, and I've mentioned this stuff in the beginning too, but I just want to reiterate it. He was the first Japanese author to ever win the Nobel Prize in literature. And so his works, like, if you enjoyed the story, I would definitely check him out because a lot of his work is, like, I was checking out his other, short stories or novels, and a lot of them seem to just be about, like, beauty and simplicity, He's so good at, like, looking into things like, loneliness, misconnections. And I feel like he's really good at, this is like a quintessential story of his, I would say, and he's really good at a lot of this. A lot of it is inspired by like Zen Buddhism, and it's so good. It's truly like, this is definitely one of my favorite types of short stories, and if you agree, I would totally check him out. There are also other stories that I have published and said on this channel before, actually. Like one that I just recently published, The Flowers by Alice Walker. I also have read Girl by Jamaica Kincaid. That's also very similar to this. The Paper Menagerie by Ken Louis. The School by Donald Barthelme. I'm trying to think of other stories. The Sniper by Liam O'Flaherty. I feel like these are very, very similar short stories in the way that, they have this sort of philosophical vibe, or they're just based on like childhood and innocence. As for just like a final quick interpretation, the story at the end of the day, I feel like it's pretty obvious by the end of it. The story is not about this unknown man looking at kids who are, finding bugs. It's a very important like meditation almost on just growing up, love, perception, and the subtle turning points of life that we don't really recognize until they've already passed, It really forces us as readers to reconsider how we see people and how we show affection to our loved ones and how fleeting beauty can truly be, especially when we're too young or too immature to understand. That's it for today. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and comment down below which short story you would like me to read next.